I always thought it was funny that like the scale started to get bigger and bigger, and we would notice like, oh my gosh. And at first, remember, because it was like a bus stop in Comic-Con, and then a billboard in Times Square, and then on the anniversary of Justice League, and it just goes completely nuts.
It all started with hope and dream. So many movements, I think, never go beyond that.
These heroes are misfits, you know, and they all come from, they're slightly dysfunctional, but in a lot of ways, incredibly relatable to just us, just people.
The emotional stakes and scale that, and the journeys that everyone goes on are really clean and kind of, they're really global and intimate at the same time, which I think is really what I was going for with these characters. We're just making the shots. I'm saying like, oh, we should do this, or this should feel like that, and this guy, Steppenwolf should cut that guy in half. You know, it just seems natural to the moment. So without any kind of, you know, thinking about, you know, whether there's a ratings issue or whatever, just kind of, this is the right for the story.
We all are heroes to ourselves. You know, we have to, because we can all stand up and we can all be strong and we can all be supported by each other. And I think that in the end, that's really what the movie is about.
Let's talk about heroes, because as you mentioned before, 10 years of doing DC hero movies.
Almost, yeah.
So you have a perspective. You have a take on heroes that are very distinctive. What makes a hero most for you?
Well, I think, you know, the thing about Justice League, I think that is sort of the thesis of the movie, is that, you know, these heroes are misfits, you know, and they all come from, they're slightly dysfunctional, but in a lot of ways, incredibly relatable to just us, just people. You know, the best myth speaks to us in an archetypal way about the struggles that we all face in our everyday lives. And I think that what we learn is that these heroes are us in a lot of ways. And I think that the real heart of the movie, if you look at Cyborg's journey, who's like really he's the linchpin, he's the kind of the why of it.
He's the heart and soul of the journey. He's on it, and even though he has godlike powers as well, because he's Borg-life, he's our human way in.
Yeah, 100%.
The one that, like Barry, to some degree, we can totally identify.
Yeah, like we yesterday.
And Ray did a phenomenal job.
I know, Ray does.
That's the other beauty of the Zack Snyder Justice League. You get to see that entire storyline.
Yeah, so when you look at sort of Ray's journey, and that in the end, there's a line where he says, you know, I'm not broken and I'm not alone, you know, which I think it really, in a lot of ways, just has a beautiful meshing with our message of mental health and our message of like suicide prevention and all this. There's just this beautiful symmetry now to the whole thing, and that a hero is just, you know, we all are heroes to ourselves. You know, we have to, because we can all stand up and we can all be strong and we can all be supported by each other. And I think that in the end, that's really what the movie is about.
Zack Snyder's Justice League builds out this interconnected DC universe. Which of these lost elements were you most excited to see restored?
You know, because I haven't seen the theatrical version of the movie or how it ended up, I was never really sure, and I'm still not. Maybe at some point I'll take a look at it, but I'm still not exactly sure like what roles were maybe diminished or removed. Of course, I think number one on the list is, you know, for me, is Ray Fisher's Cyborg story being really central to the, you know, sort of entire movie.
Every day I wake up different, modified.
I feel like in the shorter version, you got a snapshot of who they were. And I think in order to care about them at the end, in order for their arcs to be completed, you have to understand really what their conflicts were, what they went through to finally become the heroes that we see at the end of the movie.
Cyborg's become the emotional just spine of your film. Did you always conceive him as the heart of your Justice League?
Yeah, we did. And Chris Terrio and I, from the beginning, were always like, we wanted Cyborg to really be front and center. We thought it was time for a character like Cyborg to have his day in the sun. Frankly, you know, the character really goes on a big journey, you know, and goes through a lot of pain, but like has a cathartic experience, very similar to maybe the story of how the movie got made. Fiona from China, she is
dear to our hearts. She was one of the founding members of the Snyder Cut movement and really instrumental in bringing it to all of us. So let's get her on the line and say hi to her.
After watching Justice League, it was immediately clear that many parts of the film were not consistent with your usual filmmaking style. So we are the fans. We knew that there was a real version of the film out there. We started asking for it. Why not? It all started with hope and dream. So many movements, I think, never go beyond that. To actually achieve a dream, you need organization and selflessness.
I always thought it was funny that like the scale started to get bigger and bigger, and we would notice like, oh my gosh. And at first, remember, because it was like a bus stop in Comic-Con and then a billboard in Times Square, and then on the anniversary of Justice League, and it just goes completely nuts, and everyone was like, okay.
It's like snowball, rolling with a big snowball.
Yeah, a giant snowball now, yeah.
So this is such an unprecedented opportunity for fans to truly see your vision. And I know they were so integral into getting this going. What was the most important thing for you to get right in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
I think, the most important thing to get right was just the honesty of the movie and just be honest with the stuff I wanted to do and my sort of vision for the movie. I really wanted to make it as much as uncompromised as I could, and that was the real work we did, is to get back to, that January 2017 cut that I had prepared, and that now you kind of got to see whatever this is, however years later we are now.
Now, I absolutely love the R rating. I think one of the beauties of the R rating is it gives a reality to the sense of what the violence that could happen if superheroes and villains were doing this to people. You see a character go against a rock, you see the blood splatter behind him. And I remember specifically talking to you at BVS about the R-rated warehouse scene you were going to be showing us in the Ultimate Cut additionally of Batman vs. Superman. For you as a storyteller, that R rating is a very important tool. It adds a very unique realism and grounded nature to your film. What do you feel the R rating adds for your storytelling?
I just think that, famously, I've always said that like we just take these characters really seriously, and I love this sort of mythological, sort of Lord of the Rings, style, scale, and I just think that because look. Do we consciously go like this shot's R-rated, that shot's PG-13? No, we're just making the shots. I'm saying like, oh, we should do this, or this should feel like that, and this guy, Steppenwolf should cut that guy in half. It just seems natural to the moment. And so without any kind of, thinking about, whether there's a ratings issue or whatever, just kind of, this is the right for the story. And frankly, that's the biggest tool, is that it allows us to sort of not second guess ourselves and just kind of make the shots as we think is necessary.
I do think that the scale and the scope of the movie is fitting, and even emotional, the emotional stakes and scale and the journeys that everyone goes on are really clean and kind of they're really global and intimate at the same time, which I think is really what I was going for with these characters all along, what I've done and what we've even talked about on this call. What I always hoped for these characters was these giant stories with really intimate, relatable arc, character arcs. So
I think a lot of female-forward films, especially in this genre, struggle to convey a feminist message without being a little bit cheesy or too on the nose. And in Justice League, there's a moment with Wonder Woman that I thought could have fallen into that trap, but it didn't. So I was just curious if that was something that you guys were conscious of.
Well, I think there's two moments for me with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, it's always been important to have this balance of femininity, but also of strength. And we have to look like the root of her character, was born with, in feminism. So I think striking that balance was really important. But I love the fact when the little girl, after she saves all the kids and she says, "Can I be like you one day?" And she says, "You can be anything you want to be." Because I think we're all Wonder Woman, right? That's the message there. And then I do love when in the tunnel battle, when Steppenwolf says, "This one is mine," and she goes, "I belong to no one." And I just think that is such a powerful moment, you know. So and that's what I love about her in this version of the film. We really get to see her as a warrior, but we also get to see too this struggle with her of her missing her family. You know, because I think that's the thing, like as a woman and seeing women in comics and in action, I want them to be dimensional. You know, you don't have to be just one thing. You know, you can be vulnerable and sensitive, and you can also be tough and strong at the same time.
When I first started working on the movie, when I read the script and talked to Chris about it, I was pretty wide-eyed and pretty excited about the possibilities of kind of taking this iconic superhero and trying to place him in our world in a way that you could understand the reality of the dilemmas that he might face, and also just in the world's reaction to him. And I felt like, to me, grounding him in that way, or kind of bringing him into our world rather than us going into his, was sort of the way I thought about it. And I wanted to make sure that, because one of the big knocks against Superman, I guess, in some ways, is that like he's unrelatable because his powers are so great and he is abstract, and so therefore is almost like you know, mythologically just a representation of God on Earth. And to me, I was like, okay, that's interesting and I understand, but like I want to like connect with the character in a deeper way, so that he's not aloof and not away, and that he's, you know, that we understand his struggles, and that everything's not easy for him, and it's a difficult world, and his interaction with the world is far more, it's harder than you'd think it would be.
I think the challenge, what's cool is, you know, with Watchmen, you know, it's basically, you know, that whole thing, you got to know the rules before you can break them. With Watchmen, you really learn the rules of superhero all the way. You know, what it takes to make a superhero, what it takes to destroy a superhero. And that was invaluable when going into this, because, you know, what I was trying to do here, what I felt like the irony of this film is that there's no irony, and that what I was trying to do is make Superman awesome and relatable, and like, I want to be, you know, you want to make a Superman that you want to be, not a Superman that you just are observing, you know. And I think that with what I learned from Watchmen, I think that was what that was the challenge of making this movie, was trying to get Superman back where he belongs, at the top of the heap.
Well, on that note, because I don't want to, they just want to give me the wrap. I just want to ask really quickly. You mentioned that this is the end, but it ends on a cliffhanger. There's so much more story to tell. When I think of Marvel and the MCU, that's a story that's just going to keep going, and it could go on forever. But with these characters that you gave to us, do you see a definitive end? Is there an end to their story in your mind? There is.
Yeah, there definitely is. Yeah. I mean, if you go to Dallas to the AT&T gallery where they graciously allowed me to put up some of my artwork and stuff, I put up the dry erase board that shows the 2-movie arc for what would have been the 2 more movies after this. Of course, a lot has changed, and they aren't exactly, if I were to shoot it, it wouldn't look exactly like that now, because there's just a lot of, you know, stories evolved, but it has a lot of the elements, and in the same way that those like Lord of the Rings, they kind of have a conclusion.